Hey guys, if we reach 1,000 likes, we'll be giving out 2 of our new shirts. All you gotta do is click like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. One of the things I always think about before making these types of videos is, what are my true feelings about the episode? You see, a lot of people tend to forget, but most of what you see on YouTube isn't a person, but a character that content creators adopt to deliver their messages. And I, like a lot of people on YouTube, tend to fall in the camp of poking fun at just about everything, just for the heck of it. Countless facetious videos in which I review the episodes of shows are needlessly nitpicky and inflammatory simply because I know that it will piss people off, and I like reading the comments. While there are serious problems with all of them, I over-exaggerate them and deliver them in a way that is supposed to make the audience mad. After doing that for so long, the line between you and your character though starts to blur. You go through life while viewing media and not simply absorbing it, but looking for the most insignificant flaws within it. A misplaced object, a strange cut, or something else. You stop watching movies and shows and start dissecting them, and through it sometimes miss some of the fun of the product. Joji, or she's better known as Filthy Frank, said it best. I ended Joji vlogs because I wasn't filming and doing things that I would do, but what Frank would do. And that's where I am right now. With the reviews of The Perfect Pair, does Moliminous hate it or does Faith? On the surface, I get why everyone likes it. They all give just about the same reasons. It's a feel-good story that tells the tale of two lovers overcoming obstacles to be with one another with nothing but the power of love. It's a bland, cookie-cutter formula that's been done many times before. And there's a reason for that. Because it works. It's a copy of Romeo and Juliet, even down to the part of both lovers ultimately meeting an untimely death. Only the conflict within this episode is artificial and hollow. You may be thinking, but that's the point. It's meant to be hollow to show how susceptible we are to hate, that small comments that we misunderstood could lead to the death of multiple people. It is a story of much ado about nothing. A small slight between a handful of people spiraled far, far out of control. But that's just it. With Romeo and Juliet, there was a spark before an explosion. Some sort of signal that told us this is the catalyst of a raging storm. While we don't see the original full context beginning, what we do see is a slight between two rival families that escalate. With The Perfect Pair, it has no spark, no moment that is overreacted that causes these people to act so irrationally towards one another, and it truly is never explained in any detail. We understand the distaste of the pairs in the context of one of them abandoning their daughter, but even that isn't exactly true. You see, unlike the story of Romeo and Juliet, both do not agree to have family names revoked. Instead, Pear Butter decides to move in with the Apples. She is the one who revokes her family name, and the only one, crashing the whole Romeo and Juliet dynamic. Only one person has to lose everything. This paints the Apples in a positive light, despite the fact that they were just as much to blame and just as hate-filled. It even continues this throughout the ending of the episode with Granny Smith's comment about him coming back. Of course, Granny was more accepting of the two because it wasn't her son who had left her. She made no sacrifices and lost nothing in exchange, and yet the show wants to paint it as if she's grown and matured, yet I don't believe she deserves that praise. She may have even taken solace in the fact that she took the daughter from the pairs. This episode does plenty of things good. Well, good enough. But if you stop to examine it, a lot of this simply wasn't well executed. In the source material, we get a reason as to why each person doesn't actually like the other family. These characters have plots of their own, subplots. They have defined traits and characteristics. We get to understand why they don't like the other person. However, in The Perfect Pair, we get none of that. In fact, the entire rest of the families, with the exception of Granny Smith and Pear Butter, don't seem to care about the other families. They all seem to go about their business peacefully. You're already wrecking the dynamic. You could go ahead and chalk this up to the show being short, but Romeo and Juliet isn't a long play. There are multiple ways that you could have done this without stretching the episode to an obscene length. Sure, you can sacrifice some of the details upon individual people, or you could have interjected those side characters such as Mrs. Cake, the Mayor, and the other codes as being members of the family. This would have allowed you to be able to give some detail on the lives of other apples and pears who may have hated the other families. The show doesn't seem too opposed to creating characters out of the blue, such as the woodcutter guy, so it's not really that big of a stretch to just say that there were other apples that they had to travel to who used to be in Ponyville and now aren't for some sort of reason that's never going to be explained, because that's one of the things the show loves to do, not to explain anything, and that's where they get the information from. But as it stands, it's not a family feud, it's a feud between two people who happen to be in different families. And unlike in the source material, there's no build-up within the story of any kind. While in Romeo and Juliet, they have continual fights and skirmishes leading to the deaths of two others before Romeo and Juliet take their own lives, which gives the families far more reasons not to like one another. But there's nothing like that here. In the scenes such as Bright Mac destroying the water silo, nothing comes of it but a few choice words. No threats, not even a warning. Just him saying, "You owe me a new silo," disregarding the massive amount of damage that was caused to the field. This would have been a perfect way to further stress the situation, but they use this more as an opportunity to show us that the father is a harsh individual more to his family than to the apples. Instead of chastising Bright Mac, he more attacks his own daughter. And that's also a big problem. A majority of the scenes focus on the negatives of Pear Butter, showing him as a harsh individual who cares little for those around him. While in Romeo and Juliet, the families are not hateful to one another and take great strides to ensure the comfort of their siblings. When they thought Juliet was sad, they wanted to cheer her up. And in fact, both families had people who had actively helped the two, sympathetic to their causes. The entire story feels less like a family and more like an isolated event. The side characters leave a lot to be desired, and in most cases could be replaced and lose nothing of value. In a lot of cases, that would help a large plot holes dealing with Applejack and Big Mac not already knowing this about their own family, as no one here is really opposed to telling them, and only Mrs. Cake had ever even shown the slight bit of reservations. This show tries to emulate Shakespeare, and on every single level it seems to fail. It's not a story of lovers overcoming obstacles, but of giving up and giving in to the easiest path of least resistance. They spent so much time villainizing Pear Butter that you alienated him from being anything resembling to that of a real person. You showed your hand far too early, and once again had your typical bias of all men are evil on full display for the audience. But most egregious of all, you missed the chance to actually display Shakespeare's message in a convincing manner. You see, the death scene was heavily symbolic and marked the period where Romeo and Juliet achieved their dream of securing peace between the two households. They simply would not be around to enjoy it. Instead, you simply leave that scene out entirely and put the character's resolution decades after the event. And during that time, we only see Granny and Pear Butter make amends, further disassociating it from the family feud motif you once touted as being key to the story. And by the way, Romeo and Juliet, that thing that you're mimicking, right, is supposed to actually highlight how stupid the two characters are. In fact, the entire story can be summarized by Netflix and chill to the highest degree. It's teens who were more infused with lust than love, and because of this, acted irrationally in many different regards. It's not these intelligent people who are supposed to end up in this happy ever after relationship. Granted, you do kill off the parents, but that's not even shown in the episode. So is this a bad episode? Yes. Yes it is. At least to me, for all the reasons I outlined. So why is it so liked by so many people? Well, it's simple. It's taking half-baked story elements that the audience will enjoy that also take little effort to implement. They tie it in with the characters that we already love and about a background story that we've been wanting for years. The mere fact that it was about Applejack's parents was all it took for the audience to hail this as one of the best episodes ever done, not ever stopping to realize how horribly it was all implemented and put together, how it plays on your emotional connection to an already existing character to carry the story. Honestly, ask yourself, if this wasn't about Applejack, would you be nearly as invested in this story? Would you honestly take this as being a golden episode, with how little it actually tells you of the circumstances surrounding these events? MLP has always had this issue. It kind of relies on a fanatical fan base to accept everything that it puts out as godsend. It expects people to automatically associate it with being good, so they don't tend to put as much detail or effort into the script writing process. And I know people will get offended by me saying that, but it's clearly true. Even from EXO staff members themselves, they have specifically mentioned that a lot of people get into the show and they use it as a jumping off point for their careers for other and bigger things. There's a lack of passion that seems to be put in these episodes, and for some reason people mistake tropes and already existing concepts that we're already in love with as being good writing. Anyone can make a Romeo and Juliet story because it's already been done, and if you just have the slightest bit of competence, you can actually make the audience feel for these characters, especially when they already have some sort of emotional attachment to these people. You didn't earn the tears that you got. You manipulated them out of the audience. You didn't earn the praise that this episode received. And I'm not even sure why bronies are so quick to praise the show, when it's so apparent that many on the staff do not actually care for you. They've made articles, blog posts, tweets, all diminishing you and your existence. Sure, some of them have gone back and tried to clean that up and clarify that when they said fuck bronies, they weren't really saying fuck bronies. It's pretty much summarizes this. I'm sure a lot of you guys already know this saying. Once you hate someone, everything they do is offensive. But I believe the opposite is also true. Once you're so deeply in love with a show or writer, everything they do is automatically amazing. But hey, that's just my opinion. I could have, easily have just put out a fluff piece saying how this was the most amazing episode ever and gained another 300 subs or something from this video. But I'm fully aware that a lot of you will disagree with me. I'm fully aware that a lot of you aren't even actually listening to what I'm saying. Most of you will simply write a comment already espousing the belief that you held before you got here, whether that be that the episode was bad or that you loved it and it was the best episode ever made. Most of you will not even actually listen to the arguments that I put forth. Half of you aren't even familiar with Romeo and Juliet, but that's just the way it is. So, for those of you guys who actually listened to the video and actually saw my points and still found errors with it, which is perfectly fine, be sure to let me know. Yours are the comments that I actually care about. Yes, it's fun to see people who just automatically agree with me. That's always good for the ego. And it's always lovely to see people who tell me I should get cancer and I should die. That's just tops, mate. I'm glad you love my videos enough to keep on clicking on them to tell me that. But I actually don't want a hug box nor an echo chamber. Just tell me your honest opinions and actually refute my point. If you agree with me, that's great. Tell me why. If you disagree with me, that's also great. Tell me why. I've been Moliminous. I'll see you guys next time.